Certain H-4 spouses are now able to apply for employment authorization documents from the Immigration Service. This video will explain who those spouses are and how to qualify. On May 26, 2015, the Immigration Service began accepting applications for work permits for H-4 spouses, and we will talk about the most frequently asked questions about this procedure. H-4 spouses of H-1B professionals can apply for EADs in the following two circumstances. One is when their spouse has an approved I-140 visa petition at any time, and the second is if their spouse has a PERM application or an I-140 filed at least 365 days before the end of their 6-year H-1B period. What kind of paperwork do you need to file with the USCIS when you want an EAD? Well, you have to show that you're in H-4 status and that your spouse is in H-1B status. You'll be filing a Form I-765 with a $380 fee. You also have to show a notice of approval if your spouse has an approved I-140, or if your spouse has a PERM or I-140 filed 365 days before the end of their 6-year H-1B period, you must show that as well. Now, I recommend that you file your H-4 extension of status and your application for an EAD simultaneously. Otherwise, it's going to take you much longer to get your EAD. You should inform the USCIS that the period of time you would like for your work permit to be valid is exactly the same amount of time that your H-4 status is valid. Getting a work permit based on your H-4 status gives you a lot of flexibility as far as employment. You can work for one or more employers. You can work as a contractor. You can work as a salaried employee. If you don't like your job, you can quit and go to another job. You can even form your own company. If both you and your partner are both in H-1B status and your partner fulfills the requirements that we talked about in an earlier slide, a good strategy may be for you to switch to H-4 status, and then you have complete flexibility as to which employer you want to work for or starting your own company. Ideally, you should submit your application for an H-4 extension and for an EAD 6 months before your H-1B is going to expire. How long does it take to receive an EAD from the USCIS? Usually about 90 days, but as I used to work for USCIS, I can tell you it's a big bureaucracy and sometimes takes longer. If you don't submit your application in time, you could be out of work, and that's why we advise the 6 months rule. What happens if your spouse has changed employers and it was the first employer that filed the I-140? Well, under AC 21, if the I-140 was approved and the 485 was filed, as long as your spouse is in the same or a similar occupation, he can still get a green card based on the original I-140, and there's no need for the second employer to file any paperwork. However, if he never got to the stage where the priority date became current, the new employer will have to file another PERM, another I-140, but your spouse will be able to retain the original priority date. And as long as your spouse stays in H-1B status and is not working on the EAD, you will be able to stay in H-4 status and get your own EAD. Here are various questions our clients ask us. Can you use premium processing to apply for your EAD? Can you file the application online? How about H-4 children of H-1B parents? Can they apply? And the answer is no to all three of these questions. Even though not all H-4 spouses will be able to get EADs, the Immigration Service estimates that in 2015, up to 180,000 spouses will be able to qualify, and as long as the H-1B cap stays at the same amount, about 55,000 spouses each year will be able to qualify. One last thing, in case you're wondering, it really doesn't matter whether your H-1B spouse is in a cap exempt or cap subject category. So for instance, if you're married to a physician and the physician gets a J waiver, the physician is not subject to the H-1B cap, but you will get an H-4 and be able to apply for EAD as long as your spouse meets the qualifications that we discussed earlier.